Greetings, you majestic, enigmatic jellyfish. My name is Zal, and welcome to Tales from the Trophy Hunt. You know what one of the best methods of storage is? Barrels. I myself have wanted a decorative barrel for most of my adult life, as there's something about the rustic aesthetic which I just really gel with on a personal level. My love for this simple method of storage, however, has been thoroughly gutted, maimed, and shot by a firing squad after tackling some of the most frustrating series of events brought about by today's trophy hunting culprit, DeepRockGalactic. Now, this is a game which I admittedly only casually dabble in, as the Platinum Trophy requires me to put an absurd amount of time into it that I'm just not willing to do, with trophies that at its core turn the hunt into a massive grind. That being said, it's an incredibly enjoyable game, with fantastic randomly generated exploration, satisfying gunplay, and makes a general point not to take itself too seriously. I mean, I myself made a dwarf that looks like Bob Ross, and equipped him with a bubblegum flamethrower, because you can't have wanton destruction without a whimsical contrast. You can also throw it back like he's Megan Thee Stallion, as well as throw back drinks so hard that I unlock the primordial power to teleport. Yeah!
Drink, I like it. Another!
Needless to say, silliness and goofing around is part of what makes DeepRockGalactic so enjoyable and charming. And the best way to be a silly little goofball is of course with these barrels, bringing me to the topic of today's tale. I'm going to be going through the 5 trophies relating to these cylindrical nuisances. 3 of them I got back in 2022, close to when this game was ported for consoles. However, the other 2... oh boy, the other 2 I recorded my attempts at achieving. And let's just say, I'm glad I have the patience I do, because this might just be the dumbest set of things I've done for trophies in a hot minute. With that being the case, I'm also going to talk you through how you yourself can get these trophies, just in case if any of you watching are as masochistic as I am. And if you're not, well, it must be nice. So sit back, relax, and let's get the show on the road with the first trophy I need to talk about, Barrel Rider, needing me to stand on a barrel for at least 3 seconds. But how is that a challenge? I mean, it's a barrel. It's hardly a vessel for incomprehensible and high-speed movement. Oh, that's how. Maybe it's the fact we're in space, or I've completely underestimated the compound weight of the average dwarf, but the barrels in the space rig have almost ragdoll-like physics embedded into their very existence. However, we'll need to understand the physicality of these barrels before tackling some of the other trophies later on. Unfortunately, in terms of consistent results, it doesn't seem to exist, as every time I stood atop the barrels, it was a mixed bag of both velocity and ferocity. Nevertheless, there are a couple of things to this. Firstly, once you've committed to the straddle, don't touch your controller in the slightest and just let it happen, because for every time this happened, there was a time that this happened. Trying to control the chaos just isn't worth your time, at least once you're riding the barrel, with a quite frankly intimate intensity. Controlling where you ride is the next logical step, as there's plenty of places within the main hub to take advantage of inclines and angles. My best recommendation is right by the forge, as the barrel will not only have a harder time physically jittering out of the corner, but dumping other barrels around your target as a makeshift barricade can quite possibly give you the extra second you need for the trophy to pop. There is a bit of a debate about whether you need to stand on one barrel for 3 consecutive seconds, or if it's 3 seconds in total. Whilst there isn't a definitive answer, especially when factoring in different versions of this game, just aim for 3 consecutive seconds, because at least that way, you cannot be wrong. Plus, there's a high chance you'll stumble into this trophy anyway, as when I was recording for this footage, I did it at least 3 times by accident. It's more on the finicky and uncontrollable side of difficulty rather than actually being difficult, setting the tone for the next trophy and the inspiration for this video. The A-Team trophy wants you to put a barrel in every seat of the drop pod. I think it was a missed opportunity to call this trophy the B-Team, given the word barrel starts with a fucking B, but I'm also a fan of the insinuation that a quartet of barrels is more competent than the average dwarf foursome. Saving that enlightening comparison for another time, let's get back on track. What do we need for this trophy? Well, first I need to open the drop pod by selecting any assignment for the mission terminal. It doesn't matter which one, however I picked up Loser's Walk, as it made me think of one of those really shitty motivational posters, but more importantly, the drop pod is now open. However, there's an adjoined ladder and ramp I have to somehow jimmy the barrels up against. You'd think I'd be able to pick them up with just, you know, my hands, but alas, my only option aside from riding them like a mechanical bull is to kick them. Now take a good look at my first couple of attempts in doing this. Does it really look like I have any form of control? Hell, you can actually see the moment where I fully comprehend just exactly what I've gotten myself into. Would it then surprise you to know that I got this trophy in only 6 minutes? Trust me, I'm just as shocked as you, given that my default setting is patiently incompetent. So what can I glean from my initial round of property punting? The first thing that I noticed was that my sensitivity was way too low. I physically could not keep up with the ascending barrel, as you essentially need to juggle it up the ladder. After fixing that, the next thing to do is observe the barrel's behavior once it's in the air. It's still unpredictable as hell, especially upon that initial kick. It's a bit of a toss-up as to how the barrel lands against the ladder. That being said, you have a lot more control with the rebound kick if you're able to get under it. With those, you're able to aim the trajectory of the barrel a lot more purposefully, and even if you do screw it up, it at the very least will go up, leading to another follow-up kick most times. The first barrel I get up the ladder was purely by chance. Caught a couple of nice rebounds and it was up in 3 kicks. No matter, because that's 1 down, 3 to go. Once it's up those stairs, it's a complete non-issue. Get nestled in that chair, you little crab cake. Since I've had 1 successful deposit, now it's time to see what we can do to replicate that result. And surprisingly, a couple more finer details to this are brought to light. I am only just now realizing how much of a fucking nerd I am talking to you about the intricacy of space barrels. Speaking of space, that's the next thing to look at. You don't want to be too close to the barrel as you kick it, because having it ricochet off your fat forehead is quite disarming at the best of times. Plus, we don't want to deal with the ragdoll physics these barrels are oh so willing to demonstrate when colliding into dwarf flesh. Position yourself with your back right up against the mission control desk for the initial kick, and once you're in the midst of a good juggle, move in closer to angle the rebound up and over the ladder. It doesn't always work, but it's the best way I can describe it, as I drop kick barrels number 2 and 3 into their respective chairs. Now, as I move my 4th and final barrel into position, standing the barrel upright, whilst admittedly a bit out of your control considering the randomness of traversal, if you can get it up, yes, I know what I said, well, just watch. Let's just rewind that and have a closer look, shall we? With the barrel standing vertically, the top and tail don't ricochet with the ladder's handles as much, if at all. In addition, getting more height to your rotation, giving you're spinning the barrel on the longer side. If I had lined myself up with the ladder before the initial punt, the barrel would have been semi-locked into place in between the railings, allowing for a way smoother glide up, given the lack of wiggle room. Furthermore, upon reaching the apex of the stairs, if the rotation is going towards the drop pod, there's a better chance of the barrel carrying the kick momentum forward and landing on the ramp. At the very least, vertical flipping potentially eliminates the pesky guard railing from ever being a factor. Going back to the initial punt, see how the first ricochet keeps the barrel almost perfectly in place, leading to an easier follow-up? This isn't just a one-off. It's consistent with every following attempt with stand-up barrels. In case my blatant over-analysis wasn't a dead giveaway, upright barrels when lined up properly are the most effective way to maneuver these lumps of cold brew into place, which makes it all the more frustrating and a real slap in the crown jewels that you have zero say on how the barrel stands once you get it to the ladder, with pure random chance dictating the fate of the barrel's climb before you even begin. Now that's been said, that also definitively means that there is a best spot to kick from, along with a best trajectory and distance pre-kick, which was more than I thought I'd figure out doing this. But the time it takes for you to set the barrel up to meet these conditions, you'd have statistically better odds just mashing the kick button and praying. I mean, you were warned, I'm a fucking nerd. Back to the trophy at hand, however. With the final barrel in play, I drop kick that soggy donut into the final chair, getting me the 18 trophy. So with that done, what's next? Surely it can't be too time consuming and utterly pointless if albeit a bit quirky and equal parts cute and conceptually evil. Oh no, you're not reading that wrong. I have to cram every single barrel in the main hub into the drop pod to fulfill the requirement for the Big Leagues barrel trophy. Time well spent. You know what you did with a trophy name like that. You know full well what a waste of time this is. There's a grand total of 25 barrels scattered throughout the main hub, with a few of them being tucked away high up in the rafters as an extra fuck you. I've already gone through 4 at this point, and to be quite frank, I'd be amazed if I could say anything more about the art of keg tossing. I'm not a strong man. Nevertheless, there's a bit more to go through while we proceed to barrels number 5 and 6, as there's a gaping hole I've neglected to mention, acting as a Venus flytrap for any and all barrel-related fun time. Think of this hole as a really unhealthy booty call. Avoid shooting your payload directly into the hole, avoid eye contact lest you want to be drawn into its maw, and they can get something much bigger in there at any time. Disgusting analogy aside, taking a look inside, you'll see why this is such a disaster area. If you're struggling with the current ladder, this one's twice the size and in a more awkward position, with it being the only viable way out of the hole. Everything I've talked about regarding barrel manipulation can be applied to this area as well. However, to offer a counterpoint, just take your time and steer clear from the big blue hole, okay? There's a good dwarf. Next up, barrels number 7 to 10 are located near the Abyss Bar's karaoke machine. There really is no other way to explain this process other than just patiently punting them over one at a time, using what we've learned along the way. But look on the bright side, I get an earful from upper management every time I successfully place another big blue ball ache into the drop pod.
Seriously? You want to bring barrels with you during an orbital insertion?
Why, yes. Yes, I do. Now I just gotta get the other 3 up there.
You know, you really shouldn't be playing with those.
Shut the fuck up. Barrels 11 through 13, and making up the last gaggle of these nuisances on the ground floor, are tucked away in this corner just past the forge. The only facet of my experience regarding the ground floor barrels that's worth your time is this instance of me trying to move the final one, only for this to happen.
Bruh.
Needless to say, I need a change of underwear. With undergarments freshly changed, the current task now is to deal with the barrels on the next floor. Coming over to this elevator and taking an immediate left will show a singular lonely little guy in the middle of the path, otherwise known as number 14. Now, as tempting as it is to punt this runt off the side immediately, don't, because the gaping maw of your booty call is ready to gobble both it up and your sanity. Instead, take an extra 20 seconds to save 20 minutes and kick it over to the elevator, or do what I did and get a little overzealous in my kicking, causing it to topple over to the left past the railing. No matter, as this left-hand side is completely recoverable. In fact, if you're unsure where the upper floor barrels will end up landing, aiming for this area instead, whilst taking a little bit longer, is a guaranteed safety spot, with the different floor elevations acting as a net to catch them. Going into this left corner to kick them back over is what I found to be the safest and easiest method, as the wall is smoother around here, along with there being very little chance of you accidentally sending your barrels to the pit. After another delivery and seeing the pod looking quite full at this point, it's back up the elevator we go, and following the path laid out ahead of us will bring you to barrels 15 through 20. That's right, the biggest gathering of time wasters yet. Luckily, with where these guys are positioned, it makes it easy to gently tip them over the nearby railing, landing exactly where you need them to be anyway. There is also an opportunity to just cut out the middleman and get these to land on the ramp leading up to the pod, but I didn't try that at all, and you should know why by now. Don't piss away your guaranteed progress for shortcuts that could reset it entirely. Speaking of resetting progress, and to reiterate my point regarding the utter absurdity of barrel behaviour, here's my top 5 bastard barrel moments from this stupid excursion so far. Coming in at number 5, we have this little jabroni completely doing a 180 on both me and the camera for slightly touching it, dick. Sliding into number 4 is this bucking bull who spammed me around like a cheap fidget spinner before leaving me discombobulated and slightly peeved, dick. Taking the 3rd place podium position, we have one of the barrels we're currently moving, as it launches a vicious full frontal assault, leaving my shins and dignity irreversibly damaged, dick. Winner of the silver medal goes to the mini heart attack barrel we saw earlier. I don't care how alluring the booty call is, stay out of the fucking hole, dick. But the gold medal for the bastard barrel award goes to barrel number 18. I spent 3.5 minutes trying to shove this rotund storage device up the usual method, which by all means, that alone isn't even enough to earn a snotty remark. However, look at what happens when I do get this one particular barrel where it needs to go.
Please don't kick the barrels into the launch bay.
So to this day, I still have zero clue as to what happened here. Normally for a mission to start, you either have to press the button on the inside of the drop pod to launch it, or wait the 5 seconds it gives you in case you change your mind. Oh, and in case it wasn't blindingly obvious, being inside the fucking drop pod is traditionally a pretty important part. This all happened absurdly fast with pretty much no warning, losing all of the progress I had made up to that point. And I was almost done too. But the worst thing is, I have absolutely zero advice on how to prevent this. The only thing that I can think that even makes the slightest bit of sense is that because I filled up the chairs early on, the drop pod got confused and recognized the weight of the barrels piling up as a full party of multiplayer dwarfs. It's a stretch at worst and a pretty shoddy theory at best, but it placed a very real fear in me going forward when interacting with this part for the trophy. If any of you have experienced the same thing or something similar, please let me know down in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious how many people this has happened to. Getting right back to it though, after letting out a hefty yell of profanity, I decided decided it was probably in the best interest of my mental to call it a day. A decision motivated not only by the very quick and efficient murdering of the barely holding on desire for this trophy, but by the fact that the night was pretty much over, given it nearly being 5 AM. And no, you do not get to ask me why I decided to do that to myself that godforsaken early. No more questions. Excuse me, next day slide. You coming or what?
The next day,
after the gaming equivalent of a training arc, I returned bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to get back to it. I picked the mission-tainted hole to open up the drop pod, because that's how my butthole feels after getting fingered and fish-hooked by management's quick-fire protocols. But it's time to pick up the proverbial and the literal load. We're just gonna speed past what I've already showcased. Fun fact, originally it took me 38 minutes to get 18 barrels into the drop pod. This time around, it takes me 12, which is interesting, as you'd think given the random element regarding barrel traversal, that an almost 3 times efficiency increase should be impossible. Granted, no doubt some of that time can be attributed to running around, but still, that's really a significant improvement, and what I would consider proof that there is some degree of player agency involved. All that being said, let's get those last few barrels now that I'm back to where I was, shall we? Barrel number 21 is located on the rafters just above the forge, a solitary stalwart ready to be punted over the railing to the previously mentioned glass net. Barrel number 22, marking the last of this floor's barrels, is on the pathway just above our last one, and just like it, it will have the same treatment. But you may have noticed, it's green, a new variable to the well-established barrel norm and the formula we've come to expect. This one's special as it's exactly the same as all the others in every conceivable way, it's just green. Consider it the shiny variant, and I'm going to punt it in last because I'm wonderfully whimsical like that. And with that, we're on to the final 3, which can all be found together by taking a substantial trek through this hallway where barrels 14 to 20 were, going up this lift and running along the following corridor to reach the top hangar. Number 23 and 24 are sat awkwardly on an unguarded edge, with number 25 being just up the ladder in a less precarious spot. Now, I personally would recommend, upon looking back through this footage, to get these ones out of the way first, because these are the most awkward to maneuver, along with them being the most likely to end up in the big blue hole of death. A recommendation that I'm only now just realizing is pointless if you've been watching all the way up to this point. The only way I can see moving these safely is to jump from the higher platform and try to kick these away from the ledge on the way down. I mean, you can always run back up, right? Let's see if that's what I end up doing.
No, don't do it!
The amount of dumb luck that went into that entire interaction is mind-boggling. But you know what they say, it's better to be lucky than good. To be fair, it was a lot less likely for that to go wrong, considering the ramp to the drop pod covers most of the gaping maw between here and where I was aiming. But for the love of God, do it safely like I'll demonstrate now with Lucky Spinner over here. As whilst I rode the dopamine of landing that kick with precision, if I had missed, I would have thrown my PS5 at a child. Also, a small note of uncertainty here, the barrels get a little glitchy going down the elevators, which hasn't caused any issues for me personally. However, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some fuckery, like say for instance if they got crushed under the elevator as it was coming down. So try to kick them out of that potential danger area just in case, okay? Now, the final barrel is a little tricky to get moving, but jumping up on this rail and angling your camera like so is pretty safe. Likewise, there's a helpful bit of machinery sticking out of the wall which stops you from overshooting or ricocheting into oblivion. Slowly and steadily, I bring the final barrel down to safety. All that's left is for me to get these bad boys onto the ship using all the tricks and tips I've gone over so far. It's a little awkward trying to get them in considering the pod's about to burst, but once they're in the drop pod, they stay relatively still considering the batshit lunacy involved with the slightest touch otherwise. And finally, the cherry on top, the fancy green boy. I frantically kicked and sprinted with all the decorum of a happy toddler, and as I kick it up the final ladder and the final ramp, I take a breath and drop kick this final time waster into the drop pod. But my trophy doesn't appear. There's only 25 barrels. What the fuck happened? I did everything I was supposed to. Fearing the worst and the thought of wasting another night trying to do this plaguing my mind, I went full panic mode and ran around the area, checking every corner and room for any sign of a missing barrel. Even going in rooms I knew they wouldn't be in just to make doubly sure. But I couldn't find anything. Resigned to reset, I retraced my steps one last time, just to make absolutely sure I wasn't being an idiot. But lo and behold, in true Zal fashion, I was a colossal idiot. And forgot to re-dunk barrels 11 through 13. Look, don't judge me, okay? I've seen enough of these things to last me a lifetime. Cut me some slack! I quickly correct my mistake, and for real this time, with one final kick. The trophy pops and I breathe a sigh of relief as my torment is finally over. Time well spent, my ass. If you've been keeping count, however, there's still 2 more dastardly barrel-related trophies to briefly mention. And if you're able to follow along and take care of time well spent, then these 2 trophies will not be an issue at all. The 4th trophy for today is foreign objects in the launch bay, which wants you to dunk all 25 barrels into the large blue hole we've been avoiding this whole time. Given that it's a much easier target, if you're having trouble with this over what we just did, get a grip, you utter dingus. Interestingly enough though, if you do time well spent first, because all 25 barrels will be in the drop pod, there is a good chance of this trophy popping alongside it if you just start the mission you selected, as the drop pod, well, drops down into the launch bay with the trophy requirement in tow. Or you can get seriously unlucky and have a barrel decide it doesn't want to go for a ride and slip out at the last second. But just don't get unlucky. Duh. And for the final trophy for today, self-control. Play 10 missions in a row without kicking a single barrel. Now this is really complicated, so let me spell it out for you. Ignore everything about this video and don't touch the fucking barrels. A sentiment I can wholeheartedly get on board with after this utter nonsensical time killer. But there we have it, everyone. I couldn't for the life of me tell you why I decided to hunt these trophies, why I recorded it, or why I felt the need to talk about it in excruciating detail. But I did, and if you've made it this far, I hope you realise you spent far too long listening to a random guy on the internet talk about space barrels for way longer than he should have. It's okay, I won't tell anyone you're weird, your secret's safe with me. All in all, this wasn't the worst batch of trophies to obtain. The frustrations come from the seemingly random and volatile nature of what you're dealing with. However, there is some sort of rhythm to it. As much as I hate this way of describing it, you do get a feel for it after a while, as vague as that sounds, and it only took me close to an hour and a half, and that's only because of the overexcited drill blasting off prematurely. A far cry from spending 50 hours driving in circles for a trophy. This seemed like a vacation by comparison. For a set of trophies with some rather frustrating elements, they do have a certain charm and only slightly overstay their welcome. But I cannot express how glad I am that I don't have to kick another barrel ever again. I hope you all enjoyed my borderline sociopathic thesis on the intricacy of dwarven space barrels on this episode of Tales from the Trophy Hunt. And if you yourself have gotten any of the trophies we've gone through today, please let me know about your experience down in the comments so we can share in our collective pain. Regardless though, thank you everyone so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more trophy hunting shenanigans. And until next time, take care and have a damn good day.